Good morning and welcome back to my channel One Step at a Time Farmstead. As you've noticed, it's been a minute or two since we've last uploaded a video, and that was due to a couple of factors. One being with me working full-time again off of the homestead, and so time is a bit limited. And second most important factor is that our camera completely failed and I was unable to shoot any videos for quite some time. But we invested in a new camera and we are basically testing that out today, and hopefully everything will work perfectly. So let's test it out and see. And I believe it's the first time that you've seen this area of the house from the inside. This is my bar area, where we just sit and chill and visit with friends. And we are basically in the process of remodeling or revamping this area to serve as my micro home brewery and distillery as well, where I will do all my brewing and experimenting and all of that stuff. It's just a hobby that I enjoy. And sorry that I couldn't record or share this whole process with you, but being busy redoing this area, I got the idea to share a bit more about this hobby of brewing and distilling with you, and that basically from a homesteader's or a farmstead perspective, instead of the commercial beer that we all know today. Taking a step back into history a bit and see how beer evolved. And I wonder if you guys ever wonder, like I do, how did beer actually evolve through the ages? How was it years ago, thousands of years ago in ancient times, and how did it become the commercial basic lagers that we know today? And how do they actually differ? And I decided to do a series on that, just basically from the perspective of how beer have evolved and changed through times. Now, to start with that, I think we need to ask the question, what is beer actually? And if you look at the dictionary definition of what beer is, it would come down basically to being an alcoholic beverage that has been made from fermenting malted grains and then flavored by adding hops. But I think beer is actually a bit deeper than that. Archaeologists and historians have found evidence of beer being brewed up to 6,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, even China, and basically across the world. And hops weren't always available to those people, but the remains of the fermented grain drinks came up everywhere, and that's also classified as beer. And to start off this journey, being here in South Africa, there's also a beer that is made from malted barley and maize meal. Not malted barley, malted sorghum. Coming back to South Africa where I live, there is a very cultural beer, alcoholic beverage, that's made from malted sorghum and maize meal that is still being enjoyed by most of the Bantu tribes in South Africa today. And it's actually got its origin in Central Africa, Central Sub-Saharan Africa, where, you know, archaeologists and the evidence of this alcoholic beverage or beer being enjoyed over millennia. So that is where I want to kick this series off, is with a typically ancient beer that is unhopped, and it's in some of the cultures it is unfiltered, like in our Zulu tribes, which is more like at the end of the day like a cereal grain alcoholic porridge that you drink. And other tribes, however, like the Basutus, do filter it and separate, or well, at least strain it and separate the spent grains from the wort, and the grains spent then used as a porridge to eat, and the wort used to make the beer from. But in both cultures it is known as umqombothi. I struggle with the pronunciation. Umqombothi is how I what it as. So yeah, you've got basically the unfiltered or unstrained variant of umqombothi in the Zulu cultures or Zulu tribes, and then the strained version in the Basotho culture. And I want to add a third variant to it, because I have tasted umqombothi once before, and personally I didn't like the texture, you know, the porridge. And yeah, so I want to try and experiment a bit to see if I can actually make a beer from it and hop it, you know, to be more conventional to the taste that I'm used to, and see if I can make something that I can bottle it and enjoy. The other thing is, umqombothi is traditionally made over a 3-day period, and it is normally within the next 2 or 3 days, otherwise it would turn bad. And so it's not made for storage, it's made for fresh drinking. And I want to try and see, by hopping it, if I can just preserve it to bottle and basically keep it as a beer on the shelf for myself, if I enjoy it. So I'm going to make a really small batch, and I'm going to do it 3 ways. It will be a 10 to 15 liter batch, and I'm going to take a small amount and use that to make the unfiltered or unstrained Zulu style. I'm going to take an equal amount, so I don't want to use too much because I know I'm not going to drink it all and I don't want to waste, but I will make it and taste it and share that experience with you on camera as well. The second batch I'll do in the Basotho style, where I basically strain most of the spent grains from the wort and use that to make an equal sized amount batch in that. I don't know whether I will like it or not, because I haven't tried that yet. And the third style, like I said, is I'll use the remainder of the wort, and I'm going to strain that through my grain bags. So I'm going to use a grain bag that's normally not used in this process, to ensure that I remove most of the spent grains from the wort, and then use that wort to hop it so that it can hopefully be preserved and stored in my bar area to be enjoyed by myself and friends later on if it comes out to be a viable product. Yeah, so I want to do the historical thing, but I also want to experiment a bit and see if I can modernize the recipe to something that I will enjoy. I have to say, on the other hand, maybe why I didn't enjoy the experience of tasting umqombothi that I did in the past is saw how it was made and prepared after I did it, and it wasn't the most sanitary of conditions. It was very undesired sanitary conditions, to put it in that way. I saw flies and maggots in the wort, and I don't want to disrespect, and I still don't want to disrespect anybody, but I can also say that not all. I've watched other videos of people making traditional, and I can honestly say that you know, some people have less importance to, you know, hygienic and sanitary conditions or environment than other people did, and maybe doing this experiment in a controlled environment might change my mind about how I feel about traditional umqombothi, knowing that I prepared it in a hygienic and sanitary environment. And I'm not saying that everybody that does this the traditional way is unsanitary. I think it varies from person to person, and I really don't want to disrespect anybody. It's just personal preference on what I saw that specific person did with that specific batch. But they still enjoyed it, and they loved it. So yeah, so like I said, the first in this series is to basically touch on an ancient beer, or what I would perceive would be an ancient beer that would more or less correspond to the beers that were discovered in ancient Mesopotamia, that was basically made from stale malted bread, and ancient Egypt, things like malted barley, and also from ancient China. Basically it was made from malted grains, and it was unhopped, and it seems like all of that would have been made to be consumed within a, you know, the first couple of days from when it was made or brewed before it spoiled. Of course, there was no way that it was actually preserved back in the day, and that is why we come to umqombothi. Now, what is umqombothi? It is a traditional South African beer, like I said, that has been from malted sorghum, maize meal, and sometimes some malted corn or maize has been added to help aid with diastatic power, because the diastatic power in sorghum isn't all that well as in barley. In modern variations of this drink, sometimes malted barley is also added specifically to help with the diastatic power to convert the starches of the grains into fermentable sugars. But yeah, basically the base of this beer is your malted sorghum and then maize meal. And it is normally brewed communally within the tribes, and shared at some of their celebrations and weddings, funerals, and on the spiritual side specifically for invoking the ancestral spirits of, basically their forefathers. So it's something that is, so umqombothi is more than just a drink. It is a ritual, basically, brewed for wedding. So umqombothi is more than just a drink. It's a ritual brewed for weddings, funerals, community gatherings, and ritual or religious rituals. It symbolizes unity and tradition. Unlike European beers, umqombothi is brewed with sorghum and maize native to Africa. It is normally rather low in alcohol, about 3 to 5%, but rich in nutrition, often consumed fresh and unfiltered. Like I said, in some cultures it's like drinking an alcoholic porridge, but it's got a lot of nutritional value. The cloudy appearance and earthy flavor reflects its communal roots. Brewing umqombothi today connects us to centuries of African heritage, where beer was a shared experience and not a commercial product. Even with family gatherings today, like a wedding or a funeral, or basically it would be prepared. It's about a 3-day process to prepare the umqombothi, and then the elder of the tribe or the family will serve out of a single bowl or clay pot or cup, and take a sip and then pass it to the next person around. So it's something that is very communal, and that is where they then start sharing stories and lessons and things to build up, the young within the family or the tribe. I think it's a very special tradition to see, but it is also very strange and uncommon. People specifically from European descent to actually see something like that, still happening. And like I said, it's very tied to the spiritual or the religious aspect of things, as we can also see in other cultures like ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, where it was very much tied to religious ceremonies. What we will learn during this brew today is how to brew from alternative grains like sorghum and maize. Normally when we think about brewing beer, it normally comes down to malted barley or Pilsner grains, or in some odd cases wheat like Hefeweizen. But we will normally go to barley as your base grain, where in this case it's sorghum. Secondly, it will also help you with your skills to brew with a porridge-like mash. So it's going to be a bit stiffer than what we are normally used to in beer making, and also how to ferment that quickly in a quick period. Also how to sour, because this mash is typically soured overnight, where some wild yeast and bacteria actually turns your wort or your mash a bit sour. And then fourthly, how to embrace unfiltered beer, or the unfiltered communal beer traditions. And like I said, that's something that I struggle to get my head around because I didn't like the texture of what I've tasted before. But then again, also the conditions, how I saw it was prepared, was shocking and undesired, and I think that might also have played into my personal bias of the beer. And like I said, I'm going to break in batches and see what we like. So I'm open to trying it for a second time, knowing how it's been brewed and prepared. So I actually want to embrace, or at least try to have an open mind in trying an unfiltered beer. Because a lot of your ancient beers back in Mesopotamia and Egypt was also unfiltered and was also like a porridge-like sludge that the people enjoyed. So you will see our African brewers adapted local ingredients into beer that was nourishing, symbolic and deeply tied to the community. So for a 10 to 15 liter batch that I am going to divide, we are going to need 2 kilograms of malted sorghum. We are going to use 15 liters of water, maybe a bit less, we'll see. We are going to use roughly about a kilogram of maize meal. I'm going with a coarser maize meal and yeast. So it's basically the same ingredients except for the hops as a conventional beer. Malted grain, water, yeast. Okay, the only thing that we short here is hops. For the yeast I am using normal baker's yeast because this is a low alcohol beer, and normally, traditionally, it would have been a wild yeast that actually started the fermenting process, and that is also why it's been tied to the spiritual or religious roots in ancient times, because people didn't know what yeast was. They didn't know the existence of yeast. So the theory is that to turn these ingredients of water and malt into something bubbling and fizzing and alcoholic was magical. It was something spiritual. It's something that God or the forefathers or whatever the specific ancient beliefs of the people at the time was, but it was magical and spiritual. So just to improve our chances, and because we know what is going on, and because baker's yeast is going to be a bit more reliable than wild yeast, we are going with baker's yeast to make this beer.
Okay, so while recording this segment, I actually forgot to switch the microphone back on like an idiot. And I mean, just look at me trying to be all clever here and teaching you about the equipment that we are going to use. But in this voiceover, I'll quickly just recap everything that we need for making this beer. Obviously, we are going to need a fermentation bucket to complete our fermentation in. I am going to use a grain bag. Um, it's not normally a brew that we will do in a grain bag, but I want to separate the grains from the wort at the end of the day. So, yeah, I'm going to use the brew in bag, grain bag. We are going to use a airtight sealing lid, our airlock to seal the fermentation, ensuring that there's no unwanted yeast or bacteria coming in. Okay, this isn't really equipment, but rather an ingredient. I'm just showing you that I'm going to use some hops. Then I am going to use this old plastic boiler urn as my mash tun. I'm making a bit of a modification to use it as a mash tun. Then we are using our tube cylinder and our 3-scale hydrometer to measure the original starting gravity and the final gravity of our wort in order to calculate the alcohol by volume of our beer. Okay, in this segment we moved to the kitchen. I obviously didn't realize that I still did not switch on the microphone, so I'll just do a quick recap of what I'm doing. To gelatinize the maize meal, bring about 4 liters of water to the boil, and then add about 1 kilogram of maize meal to the pot and stir it through quite thoroughly. Then we cover it and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. After cooking for 20 minutes, it should have this consistency. So next I just took the rest of the water and the cooked maize meal and I blended it into a slurry and added it to a bucket, and as well as with the malted sorghum. I mixed that with water to make a slurry and added everything to the bucket and mixed it all together. I used my immersion blender to help me with the process. Okay, here I'm just explaining that I took this old plastic boiler or urn and basically modified it a bit with a temperature controller that I then use as my mash tun. I made a false bottom for it so that the grain bag won't touch the exposed element on the inside. Okay, so I just transferred the mash into my mash tun, and then I brought it to temperature so that the amylase enzymes can do their job and convert the sugars to, the starches to sugars. I inserted the probe of the temperature controller into the wort and used that to bring the wort up to temperature and to maintain that specific temperature. So it is now the following morning, and unfortunately last night when I wanted to share the mash tun idea with you, I was the memory card of the camera was full because we played a lot with it trying to test it out, and so filled up the whole card. But just getting back to the mash tun, what I did last night after I transferred the mash into this urn bucket here, I connected this
little temperature controller that I can, okay, I just want to zoom in there. Yeah, basically there you can see the, sorry for the glare, the temperature controller. Yeah, and I could basically monitor and keep my temperature more or less steady for the mashing process. Yeah, basically the beta amylase enzymes are active around 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. Most active at about 55, converting some of the starches to sugars. And the alpha amylase enzymes are most active at around 65 to 75 degrees Celsius, and actually starts dying off at around 75 to 80 degrees Celsius and going inactive. So I mashed it at the beta amylase between 50 and 55 for about an hour, and then took the temperature up to about 70, 75 for the alpha amylase to be active and to convert the starches to sugars. Not ideal, but it works for me, and it works excellent for, you know, this small batch mashing. And should I basically have the need to increase, I would prefer to use a stainless steel vessel and work from there. But so far this works out perfectly well and very cheap and very easy to make. Okay, after that I switched off the power, and then we have to keep this mash overnight for it to sour, and we did that. Normally this is to introduce some bacteria and some wild yeast into your wort to basically sour your mash and to start with the fermentation process. And I just quickly want to show you here that it seems like there is some fermentation action going on here. There we can see some bubbling in this wort. So fermentation is starting. Okay, another thing that I've done yesterday before fermentation started, and when the wort was cool at around room temperature, I took a gravity reading. It's not necessary, but it is at least nice to know the gravity that you start with and your potential alcohol volume that you might expect from a wort like this. So here I've got my 3-scale hydrometer and my test tube cylinder. And this is what makes this spigot so handy. Just take a bit of that wort, Here we can see our starting gravity reading at about 1.042, which calculates to just over a bit of 5% alcohol by volume, or potential alcohol by volume. Now we know that this won't ferment out completely dry, so it might be less than 5, but we can at least calculate the alcohol by volume the moment this fermented out completely. Sorry, another thing that I didn't show you is that last night I took another grain bag and I covered the bucket with it, and that was to ensure that yeast and bacteria can actually go through while keeping bugs and flies and stuff like that out of the wort. So what I'm going to do next is to take the bread yeast, and I'm just going to sprinkle this over. And I'm going to let it come out of dormancy in this wort, and then it will start eating the sugar and turn that into alcohol. The reason why I add the bread yeast is just to make sure that there's a greater colony of trusted yeast than the wild yeast. I could have also brought it up to temperature before I added the yeast to kill off the other yeast. But I want to try and keep it, still a bit of that traditional wild caught yeast. I'm just going to cover this again with another grain bag. To ensure that no bugs get into it. See you tomorrow. See you
once again
tomorrow.
This idiot forgot to switch on the mic. But in this segment, what I am actually doing is to take some of the wort and strain it through into a vessel to do the Basotho styled umqombothi. Then I dish some of the pulp or grain or porridge into another vessel to do the Zulu style umqombothi, and with the remainder of the wort I am going to hop and ferment that to try and make a more conventional type of beer. I'm using glass vessels to transfer the wort into for the umqombothi, and they do have sealable lids. However, I have removed the rubber seals from the lids so that any gases might escape from the vessel during fermentation, but it will keep any bugs from going into the wort.
For the rest of the wort, I've got a 10 litre fermenter here. I've got my boiled hop concentrate here, and I'm going to add that to the fermenter first. And yes, it's leaves and all, but it will, after fermentation, settle out to the bottom, so I'm not too worried about that. And then just drain it And I want to see if I can do the whole 10 liters, or should I sparge? Would I need to sparge the grains? So I buggered up the whole previous segment again because I left the mic off again. But yeah, here we have it. I don't know, and I messed up on recording as well. It's new cameras, new mics, it's new technology that we're trying to get used to. So basically we got, say, about 9 liters, 9.5 liters of wort out of that, along with the hops that we added. I've sealed it off with my airtight lid. I've got my bubbler in there, and this fermentation should take another week, maybe 2, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, and then we'll do a follow-up video on this one. I also dried hopped with about half a teaspoon to a teaspoonful of hops, just because I like the aroma of that hops. Now these two ancient recipes, the one with the thicker slurry, I just want to show you, you can see the active fermentation taking place here. However, I think it is quite thick, but some of the recipes says it is a thick porridge-like beer. The other one, I decided to actually add 1 tablespoon of the grains in as well. I think just to help with flavor or something. It looked so pale in comparison to the other one, but as you can see, the fermentation is still quite very active. There you can see the fizzy bubbles going up and everything's quite busy here. And as the sediment settles out, it will be clearer at the top. But both of these should be ready for tasting tomorrow, which will be the 1st of January. Today is the 31st of December, New Year's Eve, and my birthday as well. So if you like content like that, give me a huge birthday present and subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, leave a comment, wish me a happy birthday, and also tell me what you think about these ancient beers and whatever I've got going on there to try and make it enjoyable for myself. Our New Year resolution is to go and try something completely weird, like drinking an alcoholic porridge. I don't know, the one time that I've tried it, I didn't like it. Maybe this time, but at least this time I can say there's no maggots or anything crawling around in in this, like I've seen before at the other place after I tasted it. But yeah, we'll do the taste test tomorrow on New Year's Day. From my family to yours, we wish you a prosperous New Year and see you later. And there we can see the active fermentation. On our beer. Okay, it is the 1st of January, it's the first day of the year 2026. Come on. Dis die 1 Januarie, alright? Okay, these beers should be ready today, and we can see that all the fermentation ceased and the sediments are actually falling out and settling at the bottom in this one. This one consists of sediments, so I don't know how to describe that, but you can also see all the fermentation basically stopped. It seems like it might be slightly fizzy still, and even the big, well, the 10-liter fermentation vessel ceased its fermentation, and we can see that basically the pressure more or less equalized in that as well. So it seems like even on the big batch it would take only a 3-day fermentation, and that is actually quite surprising. It is the first day of the year and of 2026, and this Umqombothi or ancient beer has done its fermenting and it should be ready today. I'm still slightly torn between tasting that sludge. It seems a bit thick to me, even thicker than, you know, the one that I've tried once previously. Well, I only took a sip from a colleague of mine at, it's quite alcoholic. Can't believe it's only, well, less than 5%. Actually, I should do a hydrometer reading on. It doesn't smell all too bad. It was just at first that was very alcoholic. And this one again as well. It reminds me a bit of ginger beer almost, and it's still a little bit fizzy. And I thought I'd break out the straws today because I don't want to actually suck up all the yeast and sediment here at the bottom. I'm going to taste it and we're doing it for you. So Happy New Year from mine to yours. And yeah, let's try to be open-minded and try new things, challenge ourselves to do new things and sometimes even scary things in this new year, because that's how we grow. With beer coming through millennia, and today it's the most popular drink in the world, I don't think all of our forefathers, ancestors or predecessors, however you want to choose your language, could all be wrong. But I think thinking about how beer evolved from something like this and something like this to the beers that we know and enjoy today is mind-blowing. And I convinced my wife, sorry, I just saw a fruit fly coming through here. So it does attract the bugs, but luckily we know that there's nothing in here. But anyway, so I challenged my wife to try this with me today. Of course it is, I won't say scary, but very uncommon to me. It's something old, but it's completely new to me. And this is really a thick porridge. You could eat it with a spoon. I got a little bit in my mouth. The straw's not working.
Oh no.
Yummy.
No.
Oh God, it's disgusting. It's sour, it's fizzing, it's chewy, and it's alcoholic. But I do feel like I could go out and stab somebody or something with a pointy stick. Feel like a warrior. I'm still chewing. Your turn. Come on. Just take. You don't have to if you don't want to. I took a big gulp. It's strong. It tastes rather strong. It's
No. Not at all.
no.
Don't do that.
It's really flavorless, if I could put it that way.
It's just a strong,
You get that yeasty, alcoholic.
edible is the word. Sludge. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, what I mean, taste-wise, it's Okay, you do know that you can taste there's malt in there, but you can't really name the grain type of thing. But then you get this yeasty sourness with quite a strong, pungent alcohol vapor, but there's not really a taste that I can relate to anything. Not wheat, not bran, not barley, not brown bread, not,
Just nothing.
yeah, it's like nothing. Mm.
Or nothing.
A lot of yeast, that's what I get.
No, I'm good.
With beer, even though it's bitter, you do get that floral essence or hint of something floral from the hops. With this, there's nothing. Luckily, I didn't make a big batch of that. Was never. That would also go to the fishing thing. Or maybe we can boil that in bread and make like a malt bread. It's already yeast, out yeast.
That's good. I'm good.
This is actually the same, except it's like there's less yeast and there's no chewy bits. This could actually, I won't say it's something I could drink it, but I won't go out of my way to make it. It tastes the same as that, except there's less yeast. Although this is fizzy.
This is more like a wine.
It's almost like a wine, it's got a wine-like taste,
Yeah.
which probably also comes down to the yeast. Like a flavorless wine.
Sort of like dry white.
Or like an apple cider without the apple. Yeah, just take the taste of whatever it is away. Yeah, it is better than that. That one's very yeasty. This one you can, it's fizzy, it's almost got like a champagne fizz to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not big bubbles, it's
Fine.
smaller fizzy bubbles. Really, it reminds me of cider, like apple cider, but almost like with a lemon taste and not a apple taste.
Right.
But we can't really compare it to the beers we know. But there we go, first challenge done.
Yay.
And it's the first beer in this series of the evolution of beer that we done. I just, for control, because our hopped beer also stopped fermenting, maybe just, I'm still going to leave it so it can settle out and become a bit clearer. But I think just because there's a bit of hops in there, try that and see if it is actually something resembling the beer we know today. Well, already this has more of that floral hops aroma in it.
This actually smells like beer. Definitely get the smell.
Hops, yeah.
Yeah.
But like a floral. See, this already makes me feel more at ease.
Yeah. That's got
Kinda.
that smell.
It's got the bitterness, well, a hint of the bitterness of the hops. I didn't hop it heavily. I think altogether 15 or 20 grams of hops that I put in, but not unpleasant. You get that bitterness, bit of the sourness of that, but combined with the bitterness of the hops, it makes it better. It's almost like a light beer. Tastes like a light beer.
Beer. It does.
This is much better.
This
I'm
is,
happy I did that. I think maybe what I should do is put like a bit more, dry up it a bit more. But then again,
This
it's
is
going to take away from the experience. At least
mm,
if we can get that to clear a bit, we can carbonate it, bottle it carbonated and put it on the shelf. And we've got that one batch to remind us of this. Because we won't be able to keep these. These are going to spoil. This one won't spoil really that quickly, but that one is going to spoil. That's not bad. No? It's cloudy, which makes it a bit yeasty. So I think if the yeast actually settles out, it might still even taste better than this. But this
Oh,
isn't.
bad.
This really isn't bad. It's okay. It's not like a commercial lager or whatever that you get from the store, but it lends itself to that way. I would prefer this over that every day.
yeah, no. That's not bad. It's really not bad.
I think you can get a bit of a buzz on this. I quickly want to do an alcohol test, but now it's still fizzing. This one is also still fizzing, so it's not completely done yet, but let's see where we are. So there we go. We've got our test tube full of our beer, and we've got our 3-scale hydrometer. Is this thing, it's actually floating. So this fermented out very dry. Sorry, I just want to get a light. This fermented out to 0.992. That's very dry. That's below 1. And that's actually quite shocking to me, which means we actually failed at making umqombothi, because umqombothi is supposed to be at around 3% alcohol by volume, which means it should be after fermentation, sorry, 1.010, more or less, to be considered a beer. This is actually, you are right, considered a wine. See, it's in the red there where it says wine.
Okay.
Yeah. So this fermented, see, it's in the red. It's a wine. We've made umqombothi wine.
Yay!
Okay, now that's actually quite strange to me, because the only thing we did differently to what the traditional method is was to put it in the mash tun and regulate the temperature. What I did is I did put it in the mash tun and kept it at the temperature where the beta amylase could do its work more sufficiently, which is between 50 and 55 degrees Celsius, around 55 degrees Celsius, and then took it up to between 65 and 70 for the alpha amylase to do its job in converting the sugar, and I kept it there for an hour, where with the traditional method they would start the mash and then put it on heat until it's boiling and boil it, and then cool it down again, and after it cooled down they would add more of the sorghum malt, mix it in and slowly warm it up again until it's boiling, and then cool it down again. So the only difference is I could keep it at those temperatures more consistently than what the open fire or the other method, traditional method, is. So I think the amylase just got more efficient in converting the starches to sugars, and the yeast was very efficient in consuming the sugar and making alcohol. So in a sense, it's a failure. I didn't successfully make umqombothi beer, but this video isn't about umqombothi. Umqombothi is only the recipe that I use to demonstrate an ancient beer. But we were very successful in brewing a high alcohol beer with the same ingredients that is used in umqombothi, which is actually a lower alcohol beer. Yeah, so success in that. So it was a successful failure at the end of the day. And we actually made a drinkable, well, what I presume will be drinkable when it is finished. I wonder where the alcohol level will be when that actually completely settled out and all the fizzing stops. So that concludes our first video in the evolution of beer from a farmhouse or farmstead perspective, not worrying too much about the commercial beers, but you know, the beers that would have been at farmsteads 100, 200 years ago, but where it all started about 6,000 years ago. And honestly, so far, I must say that I prefer the
wine.
the hopped version of the beer. But thank you for watching and Happy New Year. Please like and subscribe. It's not great, but it's not bad. That's bad. This is great compared to that, in my opinion. Happy New Year. Blessings.
Bye.